So again, a salesperson, a sales job is just doing the job. Doesn't have the emotion. A closer, a professional has that emotion, has that passion, that willingness to make the deal, and is willing to do whatever it takes to make the deal happen.
Correct.
And when you have that desire to say like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes, then you can make the transition to become a professional, because you will do whatever it takes to make it happen. And you will never starve because you become a hunter.
That's correct.
And that's when you'll do whatever it takes to learn the skills necessary for you to sell whatever it is that you're gonna sell. This is Fridays Are for Closers podcast.
Learn the skills that it takes to get paid.
Welcome to the Fridays Are for Closers podcast. My name is Raul Velasquez, and I'm here with my partner, Juan Carlos Garcia.
Welcome, everyone. One more Friday, one more closing.
So today's topic, Juan Carlos, we're going to talk about what does it take to make sales a profession versus a job.
Correct. And actually, when is the right time or moment for anyone to jump boat, to go from their daily job and become a professional 100% on the sales job?
See, one of the things that I want to make sure that the listeners understand is that, and you and I both started pretty much similar beginnings, right?
Correct.
Like sales wasn't something that we went to school for. You didn't go to school for sales. I didn't go to school for sales. We found sales, and we realized that sales will give us the opportunity to scale our business, to
Correct.
discover entrepreneurship.
Right.
So how did you start your journey in sales? How did you discover the moment that you say, you know what, I could make sales a profession versus just a job?
Well, actually, that's a very good question, because when I started in the business of sales, I was going through a process of learning and discovering what it is not to just make sales, but what it is to be able to close a transaction, which is what gets you the check. So I think that the moment that I realized that I could do closings, I think that's the key element.
That's a key element.
When I realize that I can close a transaction, that's the moment I realize that if I invest more of my time doing that, then I can make a career out of it. And that's when I made the decision to jump boat.
See, a lot of people think that, and I talk to people, they're like, I don't want to be in sales. Sales is kind of like a bad word. Sales has a bad stigma to it.
That's right.
So I don't think that people make the distinction between a sales job and a sales career.
That's right.
I mean, a sales job is, you go to a Macy's or you go to a convenience store, whatever it is, and people try to sell you. That's their job, right? There's very little art on trying to sell you something, unless it's a high-end, suit or a high-end product that you're buying. There's very little art. When it comes to professional sales, that is an art.
Correct.
That is an art. And I think that's where people have to understand that if you want to make sales a profession, you have to become an artist.
Not only that, you also have to work with a product that pays enough for the work that you're going to be doing. I think that a sales job, the biggest difference between a sales job and a sales career is the amount of money you make per transaction, because a sales job is only going to be little amount, little products, something that people is actually looking for. A sales career is when you go to people, you show them what you have, and you convince them to take it.
So I think that a lot of people that start in sales, they start at the bottom, right? They
Correct.
start at the bottom and they want to sell this, and they have to escalate their position all the way to the top.
Correct.
One of the transitions, when I made my transition from becoming just a sales employee, or, I used to work for a pharmaceutical company,
Right.
Bristol Myers Squibb, and I realized that I could only be as good as my boss. Right. And when I started seeing his lifestyle, and I started seeing the car that he drove, and I started seeing, the vacations that he took. And then when I met you, and you were traveling all over the place, you own your own business, you had a professional sales career.
Correct.
He had a sales job.
Correct.
So when you are looking at those two patterns, and you start looking at who are you following, or who are your mentors, or who are the people in front of you, take a look at their lifestyle. I mean, when I looked at your lifestyle, I said, you know what? I want to do that. I want to travel. I want to go to Spain. I want to go to Europe. I want to take my weekends off. I want to do whatever it is. The freedom.
That's right.
So what enticed me to become a sales professional was the desire for freedom.
Correct.
Now, people misunderstand, because now, like, okay, I want to be free, Raul. I want to go into sales. That's not necessarily 100%. That's what got me into sales, the desire for freedom. But then freedom really is the amount of money that you can make when you close, and the choices that you have with that money.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about that, like, because you and I know a lot of people in sales that they make a lot of money.
Correct. Yeah.
But they are a slave to their job.
Correct. I mean, that's one of the things is that it's a very thin line between freedom and being a slave to your job. Freedom of the amount of money that you can make because there is no limit. Freedom of being your own boss. But you see, it requires that freedom comes with a price. That price is self-discipline. Total, absolute self-discipline.
And I think that's where people misunderstand and
Right.
they miss the boat. That in sales, you have to be a disciplined man.
Correct.
You have to be disciplined.
Because nobody's going to come and knock on your door and tell you, what are you doing? Are you sleeping? You should be at work. It's up to you to do it.
You have the freedom. I mean, if you're in sales, that you could sell, anything from where you are. Nobody's gonna. I mean, I have my salespeople. I'm not calling them every single morning and said, "Hey, you didn't show up to your job." Like everybody's responsible for their own activity.
Yes, that's right.
And we get paid for production. If
Correct.
you don't produce, you don't eat. You become a hunter.
You don't get paid by the hour.
So when you made the transition from a sales job that you probably, people have a sales job and they probably have a base and they have a base salary and they're
Correct.
comfortable.
Correct.
But then when you make the transition, when you go into a sales career, maybe you open up your own real estate brokerage, right?
That's
maybe
right.
you open up your own financial firm. Maybe you open up your own fund. I mean, we know tons of people. They have to be willing to take the risk.
Correct. They have to be willing to take the risk of taking responsibility for their own actions and to have the self-discipline to be there, to comply with what they make the commitments to, because in reality and in the end, the commitment is made to yourself. You don't have a boss, you don't have anybody telling you when to do things and how much you're going to make and when to go on vacation. That means it's on you. You are the one that has to make that decision. And once you internalize that, once you understand that's your life, that's when you can jump boats and go from your daily job that is paying you $20 an hour to a sales career that can make you $1 million a year.
And that's what I want people to understand if they listen to this, not to make the mistake that if you are just good at sales, you're going to be great in making it a career.
Correct.
Because that's the mistake. You and I know a lot of people that used to work for us, that they saw how much money they were making in our brokerage or in our firm, and all of a sudden, I could do the same thing.
That's right.
I could open up my brokerage, I could open up my firm, and then all of a sudden they fail. Why? Because they didn't have the discipline. Everybody wants to be the boss until they have to write the checks.
I gotta tell you, not only the discipline, but the determination and the drive. I gotta tell you, the qualities and the ingredients for succeeding in life, generally speaking, have nothing to do with the knowledge you have, which you learn in college. Knowledge is only potential. Putting that knowledge into action and having the discipline and the determination to do it is what makes the difference. And that's why some people say, I can do the same thing, but they don't have the ingredients, the determination, the drive, the desire, the burning desire in their head to make it happen.
And that's
no matter
closer.
what.
And that's the closer.
That's closer.
So
That's
let
closer mentality.
me give the listeners a little bit of hope, Juan Carlos, because you don't have to be 100% a closer in order to close deals.
No.
I think that if you associate yourself with a closer, that will rub up in your discipline, also in the way that you create your habits. Because I think
teamwork.
that teamwork. And in you and I know in teamwork, there's a closer and then there's the guys who set up the closer.
Correct.
So there's nothing wrong with setting up the close for the closer.
Nothing
As a matter of
wrong.
fact, if you listen to this right now, and if you have a team and you're the closer, like you and I know, you can't be the hunter all the time. You have to use the leverage.
That's right.
If you use leverage, you have to find other people that may not have the closing skills, but at the same time, bring him into your team, bring him into your atmosphere, so then that way you could close all the time or most of the time, and you have to go hunt. I mean, when I built my real estate company, I remember I had a line of people. I was the closer, right? A line of people waiting to talk to me because I knew exactly how to close. Then I had a lot of guys bring me those people that wanted to talk to me.
You know what it is? It has to do with personalities. Not everybody has the personality to be a closer, because to be a closer, that is certain thing about you that you need to have, okay? You have to be a very energetic guy. You have to be a determined guy. You have to have certain personality and certain charisma. But I gotta tell you, the people that is around you working in your team is as important as you.
Yes.
I have a couple of people working in my team that they make phone calls. They get people, to give us appointments. And to me, they are as important as I am.
Because you understand leverage.
That's correct.
Because there's a lot of guys.
They wouldn't be closers, but they do the appointment.
And that's when we talked about a lot of closers that make a lot of money, but they're slaves to their job because they don't have a team.
That's right.
So in order for you to make sales a career, you have to start thinking in a team aspect.
Correct.
And that's when you start realizing, okay, how can I leverage it? We only have 24 hours a day. You and I don't care how much money you have, how much money I have, how successful we are. We only have 24 hours
Everybody
a day.
does.
Everybody does.
The poor and the rich.
So then if we could take that as a closer, the closer looks at 24 hours and said, okay, how can I leverage my 24 hours so I could do what I do best?
That's right.
And that's when you can make sales a profession.
Correct.
When you start seeing the big picture. Actually, I just got a phone with a client of mine that he owns a brokerage. And he's like, Raul, like, I'm growing, I'm struggling in this. I said, okay, what's your sales process look like? And he walked me through. I said, you need to revamp the sales process and you need to take yourself out of the sales process and find a closer, because right now you're the closer. That means that if you take a vacation and if you move to another country, your business will suffer.
That's
You
definitely.
need to find a closer. So if you start looking at a sales career, you have to look at the big picture. Can you create a team? Can you be part of a team? Because otherwise, you're just going to be a hunter. Might as well. If you're going to be just a solo hunter, my recommendation is stay in your job, because you're going to have a high-paying job and you're going to hate it. But if you're thinking, if a guy is thinking in sales, like I could be part of a team, I could scale the team, I could grow the team, I could see up the big picture. There is truly in sales no ceiling. I know guys making millions of dollars in sales and they don't own the company.
That's right.
And I always tell people the most important job in a company is sales and marketing. That's what drives the business, right?
And it's incredible. I mean, most people work in the corporate world. In the corporate world, they may be employees of this corporation, but the corporation is providing some kind of service, and that service has to be sold. So everybody that hates sales don't understand that sales is about everything. Sales is everywhere. Sales is how the world functions. You could be working with General Motors, and you could be an executive, and you don't have to sell a car. But guess what? If General Motors doesn't sell cars, everybody's out of business.
Yes, sales is the most important part.
It's the
so now
most important
let's
part.
give them a little bit of framework so the listeners who are listening to this podcast understand. Okay, I'm in a job right now. I want to make the transition to a career in sales. What's the number one advice that you will give them right now?
Well, definitely learn as much as they can and follow the path of somebody who's doing it for a living and who's good at it.
Okay, number one advice, that if you're in a situation that you have a full-time job and you want to make sales a career, is look at the people that have a sales career and follow their patterns, who are successful.
Definitely.
And then in your job, what I want them to do is look at the highest paying guy in his job and see, would I want that lifestyle?
Correct. You have to make the comparison.
And if you don't connect with the lifestyle, then you have to make a move.
Correct.
You have to make a move. The second thing I recommend is start looking at the big picture. Like if you're a closer, I mean, a lot of listeners in here, like, I don't know if I'm a closer. I don't know if I have what it takes. That's that one thing. Closing can be taught. And that's one thing that you taught me is like, is a skill that could be sharpened.
Definitely.
Is a skill that could be...
You develop into it.
You could develop it. So if you have the desire to talk to people, you can't teach talking to people. If you have the desire to communicate, that you like to talk and to talk to people, then everything else could be learned.
That's right.
Everything could be learned as long as you have a teachable mentality. Now, like you and I have had many people that we train, and like they're so good, but they refuse to learn.
That's right.
They refuse to be taught. And if you have that teachable mentality, then you know that you could turn sales into a profession.
You know, there is at the beginning you need to follow somebody's path. You need to let somebody teach you the game. That's why I like to work with younger people, not because I have anything against people my age, but because they have the tendency to be more of a learning.
They absorb more.
Yes.
I mean, listen, millennials right now, there's a trend right now that every single millennial that wants to be in the tech world.
That's right.
They're losing the soft skills. They're losing the skills of actually having this conversation.
Correct.
Everybody's a badass behind the keyboard.
That's
Everybody's a badass, texting and social media. I think the skills of being comfortable. And the third thing is learn the skills to be in front of people.
Correct.
Take a speech course, learn how to give speeches, to speak in public. I mean, if you speak in public, man, that's half the battle. In closings, certainty always wins. The guy that has the most certainty in a closing always has the upper hand.
Correct.
And one last thing that I would advise if somebody wants to take sales as a career versus just a job is to start asking yourself, what would it look like 10, 15 years from now if I could sharpen my skills and become a closer?
Correct.
One of the things that got me to really transition is the lifestyle. I started to see the lifestyle I could give for my kids, for my wife, for my family. And that's when I decided, nothing else out there is going to give me the freedom that I need the career that I need if I don't learn this skill. Because that's when I went into real estate. I said, real estate is my ticket for me to learn how to be a closer.
That's right. And there is many layers in real estate. I mean, you could be an agent, you could be a broker, you could have your own brokerage.
Be an investor, it could be everything.
You could be an investor. I mean, there is many layers to it. And again, it can become your independence, your financial independence for the future. Okay, when I started in the business, I was barely 19 years of age. And yes, I just followed the path of my manager and eventually became better than him. Okay, and I had 30 people working with me. So I know what it means to have leverage or to leverage your business, to have other people involved and everybody makes some money, right? And then eventually, it became, something very big and I was able to open my own company with it, So I went from being an apprentice to become an entrepreneur.
And that's the key right there. If nothing else, the guys listening to this if you want to be a professional sales, you want to become a professional, turn sales into a career, you have to be willing to be an apprentice.
That's right.
Everybody starts as an apprentice.
You have to let somebody teach you. You have to let somebody teach you. Sometimes people have a problem with letting others tell them how to go about things.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a moment when you thought, man, like I know this, and then you screwed up, and then your mentor allow you to screw up or kind of let you go in your way? Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. I had many moments in which I felt that way. But you know something? If you don't screw up, you don't know how to do it right. Always remember, you have to make mistakes in order to become good at what you're doing. So yes, I had many moments, and now I work with several people and I let them screw up themselves.
I think that's a good mentor allows people to make mistakes.
Right, instead of just taking over immediately.
And I have the tendency, I tell you right now, with my salespeople right now, I don't want them to fail. But I'm learning as the organization is growing faster and faster that there's no reason why to babysit a guy that's going to become a professional salesperson. The faster they fail, the faster they fall down, the faster they lose, the faster they will get up.
That is impossible to always be on top of everything. And I got to tell you, even today, after almost 30 years in my career, I still screw up. But you see, it is part of the nature of the business. And the more you screw up, the more you learn. And then the better you become for the next one.
But I think that's where it separates also the closers from a sales job.
That's right.
Like a sales job, they're afraid to make mistakes because they're going to get fired. A closer knows that I'm always closing. And let's just kind of reframe that. Understand, people who are listening, when we talk about closing, I mean, for me, closing is helping people make a decision.
Correct.
So I may not get the sale, but I'm helping them make a decision that this may not be for them.
You got a big point. Because maybe the product is not for them. And if that decision is made based on your logistics and based on your presentation, then you're still closed. You still close.
I close 100% of the time, and
That's
I teach my
they may not buy the product,
to close 100% of the time. And how they close 100% of the time, because we'll help them walk through to see if this product is for you or not. Help them make a decision. I think a lot of people in sales jobs, they're not trained to help people make a decision.
They're trained just to sell the product no matter what. And that's where you have the high pressure. That's where you have the buyer's remorse. People calling you 3 days later telling you, listen, I don't think this is for me. That tells you that that product was not for them, but it was pushed into them.
You push. Yeah. And then you close. And every time that you hard close, that's what I don't believe in, hard closings. I mean, I've done hard closings before.
It backfires.
And every single time, 90% of the time,
it backfires.
Yeah. So you have to focus on just help them make the right decision.
Correct.
And your product may not be the right decision. I mean, how many times you and I have said with people, like, this building may not be for you, or this investment may not be for you. You have to help them make the right decision for them.
And sometimes, I got to tell you, I have some of my experiences in closing. I got some people that make a decision about purchasing a house. Then they call me 3 days later with buyer remorse. And I tell them, something, maybe this is not for you. You shouldn't, if you're not certain.
And that's the best way when you start closing.
And guess what? They buy.
When you close without pressure, yeah.
They buy. They actually stick to the deal.
Because
the moment
they feel,
the moment they feel that you don't need their sell, you don't need to sell them anything, that's when they trust you. That's when they feel that, okay, this guy's telling me the truth. And I advise my clients, if a property, even though I may like to sell it to you, is not good for you, it is too much money, if I feel that I wouldn't buy it, I don't push it to you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, even if it takes me a little longer for you to buy, And I find that that is such a good way of working because customers come to you and they trust you.
Actually, here's one of the reasons I like to do this podcast with you is because we have no framework. We just have this conversation. Like, we have a couple of topics, right? Right before we get in the microphone, we're like, okay.
I don't even know what I want to say before I go in.
What are we going to talk about? We have the framework, but you're giving the listeners a lot of insights of the framework of how to close.
That's
okay?
right.
So, I want people to discount this because this is very important. Number one is the energy of feeling that you need them more than they need you.
Correct.
The salesperson, the guy who's has a sales job, is the needy guy. Is the guy who says, please buy from me. I need this because if you don't buy from me, they're going to fire me, right? He lives on fear. The closer helps them make a decision. Say, I don't care if you buy from me or not. Like, I'm here to support you. Whether you buy it or not, it's all good for me.
You know what it is?
What is that?
Attitude. Attitude is the key element. You just said it. Your attitude is the difference. If your attitude is needy and you need the client, then that's what you are, a salesperson. If your attitude is, I don't need you, this is what it is, it's good for you, but if you don't see it, I'm sorry.
And that just gives them the opportunity to see that you are working for them, not against them.
That's correct.
So the salesperson is a needy guy, a needy person that needs the sale because otherwise he's going to get fired. The sales professional helps the customers make a decision and is not attached whether it's yes or no.
It's not attached to the outcome.
It's not attached to the outcome. You're learning from my skills.
That's right.
You're learning from my skills. I teach that all the time. Don't get attached to the outcome. And that's in life too.
You do. That's life. That's about life. But it is precisely about closing. The moment you are not attached to the outcome, people will come to you.
And makes it fun. And that's another.
That's right.
The difference also between a sales job and a professional closer is that they enjoy what they do. Man, yesterday a friend of mine called me, right, and he's asking me for a favor, and he's like, Raul, I'm gonna pay you this because he wants to. We have a big van that we use for our events. He's like, Raul, can I rent it from you? I said, I don't want your money. I said, but I know you have a couple of. He's a chiropractor, and I said, listen, just give me like X amount of sessions, right?
Okay.
And he goes, no, I can't do this. My time is more valuable. Listen, I don't want your money. I want to help you, but since you're going to pay for it, why don't we do an exchange? Then the closer kicked in, and we spent half an hour in this conversation negotiating. And at the end, he picked up the van this morning, and I closed him. And he texted me, said, man, you're a great closer. I said, I'm always closing.
You know what it is? Maybe he expected you to give it to him for free.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, you have it for free. I just want you to give me some sessions for free too. So you have the van for free. I need X amount of sessions for free. And it worked out good because that's a skill of a closer. You enjoy having that conversation with people.
And you always find an angle to make things work. A closer is sharp in that way. You find an angle, you try to make things work. I always consider myself a deal maker. No matter how much trouble we have in the transaction, I am a deal maker. Even if I have to cut some of my commission, to make it work, because I feel that that's the right property for this person. And if they don't buy that, maybe we don't find anything else.
And see,
and time is money.
A lot of people, and we're gonna get a lot of heat from that conversation alone. From a lot of people, like, oh, that's not right to discount this and that. I tell you right now, it's business. We're businessmen.
Nothing is written in stone.
Like, you have to know how to make the deal. There's other times that I say, there's no way we're gonna, we have to make a certain amount of profit in order for this deal to be made. But then at the same time, it has to make sense. It has to make sense. So again, a salesperson, a sales job is just doing the job. It doesn't have the emotion. A closer, a professional has that emotion, has that passion, that willingness to make the deal, and is willing to do whatever it takes to make the deal happen.
Correct.
And when you have that desire to say, like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, then you can make the transition to become a professional, because you will do whatever it takes to make it happen. And you will never starve because you become a hunter.
That's correct.
And that's when you'll do whatever it takes to learn the skills necessary for you to sell whatever it is that you're going to sell.
Not only that, I mean, it's important to understand that once you are in the other side of the fence, which is when you become a professional salesperson, then you know that you have no choice but to do what you need to do to get the job done.
You know what to do.
That creates that mentality of survival. That creates that mentality of hunting, as you said it. And that's what probably one of the reasons why I've been able to survive all these years.
How long you been in business?
30 years.
30 years. And 30 years hunting. 30 years closing.
And that has been up and downs.
But the difference between the people who I know that didn't last is that desire.
That
It's that desire. Because
Yeah.
for guys like you and I, having a job or being in a 9 to 5 is not an option. I think we are unemployable. I think anybody will put up with our schedule or the things that we want to do.
I think of myself as Alexander the Great that went to Egypt to destroy the Egyptians, and he burned the boats. There were 10,000 soldiers against 100,000 soldiers, and they destroyed the boats. They had to kill or be killed. There was no way back.
And that's the definition of a closer. Either you kill or you're being killed. That's it. I think we're gonna close that with that one, brother. That's a great analogy, man. So if you listen to this podcast, make sure that you subscribe. We'll give you insights of how to become a closer. Number one is make sure that you're committed to become a professional. Otherwise, you just have a sales job. The second thing is make sure that you have that passion to become a closer. That energy to become a closer. That energy to be an influencer. The energy to become an influencer.
Yes,
yeah? English is my
yes,
second
yes,
language. An
yes,
influencer. And the third is, man, either kill or be killed.
That's right.
Either killed or be killed. That's the definition of a closer. The closer is always closing.
And when is the right time to jump boats and to kind of consider your daily job something you don't want to do anymore? Once you understand what closing is and once you have the experience of doing it, that's when you jump boats. When you know that closing is your tool, your secret weapon to keep going and to make this into a career.
So thank you for listening to this podcast. Remember to go to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and follow us on all our social media platforms. And remember,
Fridays are for closers.